now in the private sector. I had a small boutique consulting firm that's where my fascination, my own view is really looking at what helping companies in the media and entertainment space deal with the transition or transformation around digital. But because I've had experience in government, about 12 years working in government, I'll share some of my perspectives. So as I said, the discussion, Moduwa is a great gentleman, someone who I've admired for years. We've not always agreed on so many things, but we've agreed on a number of things. We've agreed that digital is a whole new ballgame. Digital is a whole new thing that we know that we have to, embrace, because that is the future of the world that we're living. We agree that he's an incredibly smart and brave gentleman. We see that. He has gone against the tide and stood his ground, and I'm glad that he's in a world where very often we're buffeted by so many narratives and discussions, but he's been a very consistent fellow. And I want to thank him for also taking the pains to put his thoughts together in a book that he's sharing with the whole world today. So let me start by saying something. What is digital? I'm privileged to have listened to the lady that spoke earlier on when she talked about Kem Dilim, which is actually my namesake, when she talked about digital as being evolutionary. And I think that is the core thing here, that we need to understand that digital is not an event. It's not a light switch. It's a process. It's something that leads you. It's an enabler of sort, but it's something that leads you to do other things. And it's not one thing. And it affects everything. Everything. And we need to recognize that. Because I often find, in my experience working in government, there's always been this idea, for example, in broadcast, that if you manage to have a digital broadcasting transmitter and you installed it, therefore you've gone digital. And that's just not true. It's not correct. Indeed, it takes me back to the other thing about digital, which is that it is a mindset. It is a mindset. And it's a very important thing that we need to grapple with. And I'll dial back a little bit in terms of how we've seen the transition happen over the many years. And the world we live in today, this world is fundamentally changed by our interactions with one thing that probably everybody in this room has today, which is a mobile phone. And whether it be a smartphone or a feature phone, whatever it is, that device has really transformed one of us. But that device is not completely digital. It came out of digital. We need to understand that when we approach the issue of governance, we need to be first thing we need to do is to understand what digital is and be able to embrace it. And I think that's where the difficulty often lies, that we seem to have this thing that we can use it, we use it as a tool, often we just want to use it. I find that, but we don't completely understand what it can do. So we have a conflict. And I'll sort of explain that with the challenge most modern democracies are battling with now, which is the weaponization of data. And you've heard obviously of no collusion or there's collusion, and all the issues around the United States with the 2016 elections, and to talk about the revolutions that happened in Arab Spring. You've heard about what happened in other parts of the world, the Orange Revolution, and how accusations have been flying around how the US meddled in Ukraine, and Russia thought was also, and the issue about data, and how people are now beginning to think that perhaps, hang on a second, this issue around modern day democracy might be jeopardized with weaponized information. And how perhaps this new theme that democracies are now under threat. And how do we move, how do we deal with, how do we recognize people are losing faith in democracy? But the thing is this, and this takes me back to the point I was trying to make earlier, that for the past 100 years, we've seen Western democracy and businesses and our world framed by a concept of what I like to call the analog mindset, a mindset that was born out of scarcity, a mindset that says that, and you had, for example, the issue faced by innovators with the bike operators, for example, talking about how Lagos State or some other states are asking them to pay 25 million. So you see, policymakers have, for the last few decades, dealt with this issue from the perspective of scarcity. So the biggest problem is, how do you deal with abundance? Not a lot of people can deal with abundance. I remember Claire Shirky gave a speech many years ago where he talked about the end of scarcity. That's the reality today. How do we deal with abundance? Abundance in terms of information. So we're dealing with a world that there's so many things we're having to contemplate with. But let me illustrate it a little bit further. So now you have democratic institutions that were born 60, 80, 100 years ago. They were not born in a time when we have this information that we have today, this information overload. So these things were created from a mindset of 60, 100 years ago, when we didn't have the kind of evolution that we have today in terms of technology. So you have a conflict, a fundamental conflict. It's really like someone called it says a compatibility problem, where you design something from a mindset of analog, and then the reality is that it's now facing pushback by digital. So digital appears to be eroding the very roots, the very fabric of something which was designed a generation ago with a certain mindset. And I think that is the problem. So when you look at it from a governance point of view, and I say this because I find that, and I was sitting here and I read this, and this is really a classic demonstration of what I was trying to say, that everybody loves progress, but nobody likes the pain of change. The current analog, indeed, if I were to read it, is scarcity approach to governance, where government thinks that it has exclusivity over certain things, and therefore it must use exclusivity over power to carry out its business. And that's what you find in the example of where people are asking. So when you have a business that is built on innovation, when it meets a government policy that comes from a mindset of scarcity, you're going to have a conflict. And if that mindset, that scarcity mindset, if that regulator, if that person feels that he has power, no amount of innovation will get you through. So again, we need to, and which is why I'm really fascinated by Omojuwe's work, we need to engage. We need more people in public sector to realize and to give way. They need to let go of that mindset and understand that we live in this age. And I'll demonstrate that a little. A second thing that I did while I was a regulator in the Film and Video Census Board. We had this idea that we could stop people from taking Nigerian movies out of Nigeria. I know some of you are here in the room. And we thought the best way to do that is to actually stop people from taking the VCDs. So we had this policy that you had to go through the Film and Video Census Board, you get a license, get a distribution license, get an export license, and then take it abroad. But the reality is, if you live in a digital space, I put on a flash drive. Okay? This was then, before the cloud thing became very popular. So I put it on a flash drive. Who is the NFVCB to stop me? And I put it on a flash drive or put it on a hard drive on my computer. And I go to London, Singapore, China, wherever, and I can reproduce as many copies as I wanted. So here again, you find that when we were there as a government agent, we were thinking about it from a scarcity mindset, that we controlled everything. But when you really think about it, we couldn't control anything. And again, this is the second part of this is this. I'm in my office. I'm thinking I'm a very smart regulator, and I've said, you know, every movie that comes out of Nollywood must come to the film and video censors board. And so if you have regulations which are too stringent, what you automatically do is that you drive, because then remember that you're dealing with people who make movies ground industry where people will simply bypass you because you didn't know where they were making the movies. They didn't require any formal distribution from you. You didn't even know where they were editing it, and how they were distributing it was informally, was going through the markets. So unless you had policemen in every market in Nigeria, you will not be able to adequately police. So again, and I think that's again another example of how we made mistakes. I learned, obviously, I became a much smarter person in terms of how I approach regulation. And one of the things, again, about it is that you need to engage. Engagement becomes even more important. And I say this because digital transformation, especially in a highly politicized market like ours, is often very political. And therefore, to succeed from a public sector point of view, you need political will, you need political cover. But you also need to demonstrate certain quick wins for the marketplace to see that this thing is good for them. Especially in a market that, because fundamentally Nigerians, we're not very good with this idea of data, of numbers. So you hear, you ask someone, and I talked about it at some other engagement, how many kids do you have? To an average European, that's a very straightforward answer. I've got 3 kids. To an average Nigerian, is why are you asking me? Next answer, if you prod deeper, might be about 3. There's no such thing about 3. It's either you have 2, 3, or 4. You know, I mean, I don't know how you will ask about 4. Maybe 5. So we have a cultural hesitancy towards numbers and data. And it might appear as if it's a small thing, but it's a very important thing when you live in an age where data is paramount, where data is a new currency. So a mindset shift is ultimately very important in terms of how we move forward. And the other thing that's important, and someone talked about M-Pesa in Kenya and East Africa. So the only way digital is going to happen is often by accident, as did Nollywood. Nollywood was not planned by anybody. It happened because there was an opportunity, there was a problem, and there was an opportunity, and there were the tools to make that industry happen. So again, I'm just giving some background in terms of how digital affects us. But I'm going to talk a little bit more in the next few minutes about this concept of the analog versus the digital mindset. Because I think it's something that permeates everything we are living with today in our country. And it's also a challenge that goes deeper than, it goes beyond Nigeria. And countries that understand that that embrace that digital mindset are often countries that are moving much further along the value chain, along progress. So we need to understand that. But I will share something with you. You know, we had an election just a few months ago. And just before the election, there was this notion that voter registration will end, or voter registration ended weeks before the election. And the voter registration was electronic. You had to go, there was a smart card, you had to do a thumbprint, you had to capture biometric, and there was a system. But then voter registration ended weeks before. So if it was completely digital, if it went, so we start a process, then we build in an analog mindset to take away the value. And then, so if it was completely digital, if we really wanted to be digital, it's possible to have registration even on the morning of the election. So in terms of how we design processes, so this is again the thinking, because having been tasked to speak about governance and all of that, I find that in my experience, we say we've embraced digital, but we place in our own analog self in order to abridge that digital space. So we can never really take advantage of a true digital value chain. So imagine that. You get to the polling booth for any number of reasons. Some people have traveled abroad, some people have come back, but they cannot vote. So I think that conversation is a conversation that we need to have, and I'm glad, and I hope that we will look at it some more. So let me talk a little bit more on this thing we know as social media, which is Omojuwa's, that's your, how should I call it? That's your home, that's where you live. But it's important for us to understand again how the construct of social media came to be. That the people who designed social media, because people talk again that social media, Twitter is so caustic, so abrasive, and Instagram is like this, but we fail to understand. People talk about fake news, alternative reality, and all that stuff. But then again, here is the fact of the matter. The people who designed it did not design it with the mindset that actually they're going to be, people are going to manipulate it, they're going to be liars and cheats and all kinds of people. They just simply designed it as a means for people to share information, to reach one another. It's only in the last, which is why your Facebooks, your Twitter are having difficulties, because to re-engineer the platform. And that's why you're having that's why you're having the issue of tribes, what we call digital tribes, echo chambers, because people feel very digital. What it does is that it reinforces what you already believe in. So if I'm an Omojuwa fan and I like him, obviously if someone tweets something that's against him, I'm going to come after you. That's my first instinct. It's not whether it's true or not. It's the fact that I belong to his tribe, to his digital tribe. And that's a fundamental aspect of how, so it was designed to be fast, to be shareable, that you will tweet first or post first. And then when there's pushback, you can readily say, my account was hacked. So it doesn't give itself to deliberacy. It lends itself to urgency. And I think, again, in terms of how we deal with things, that's why and I'm sure I just read part of it in the issue of goodwill or brand will from the excerpts that we read. So if you're managing an account, or you're managing a celebrity, or you're managing some powerful group, the number one advice would be, don't react immediately, no matter what someone says about you. In fact, I have a habit of, before I post something, I post it in I type it first, and I leave it to sort of cool down for like an hour or 30 minutes or whatever time, and I can come back to it. I remember once somebody tweeted something at me and said, "Oh, I need your response now." I'm like, I can't. And 1 hour later, Mr. Mba, I'm like, I have to read it again, what I posted, and see what does it mean to me? What does it mean if Mr. Tunde is reading it in London? What does it mean if Basil is in Germany seeing it? What does it really mean? And I think that is, again, if you look, I'm saying this because let's understand how the platform that we talked about, how was it created? Because if you don't understand how something is created, when you use it, you will most probably use it the wrong way. And I think for us in governance, we see this tool simply as a tool not to change lives, but to share narratives. And I think that the conversations we had from the first panel was really, really insightful because it touched on the heart of the matter. And so what I decided to do from that point on is really to focus my discussion this morning, my keynote, on the elements of how the fundamental aspects of digital, that you cannot transfer value, create value, share value if you don't understand this concept. That there's a mindset. And that mindset, that what we call a digital mindset, is fundamental to how you create value in a digital space. And that also, that you're dealing with legacy of makers who are, and interesting, I was having a sidebar with Bamidele just now, and we were talking about how we're dealing with the average population of Nigeria, full of young people under 35, but people who are making policies for us, for this majority of millennials in this hall, are people fast approaching 70, and all their memories and education was etched long time ago in a scarcity mentality. So you're going to have pushback, always. You're going to have that pushback, and that pushback is, you experience that every day, and that's one of the things why you have a government and policymakers that feeds on extraction. Let's not create value. When we see somebody trying to create value, let's see how much we can extract from that value the person has created. So, and that takes me to my final points. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. Let's talk about the role of influencers. Are we going to get to the point where there will be some form of regulation? My guess is this, because someone asked me earlier, do you think social media should be regulated? It's not what I think, it's what I know. It will ultimately require some form of regulation. The same way, again, let me say this, and I say this with due sense of responsibility. When broadcasting started in the early 20s, everybody had a ham radio, everybody was broadcasting. You had, the technology was there. Later on, especially when it's in the public sphere, that you had to have some measure of control. I just reading the other day how, I think it was in Sweden, an influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers tweeted something about self-harm, about suicide. And how the Swedish government, because of that, is considering, because at some point, influencers are going to be seen in the light of the context of what we, from regulatory economics, call impact. Once you begin to have impact beyond the person to person, but person to multitudes, and the value of that impact, the potential harm that can be done, you fall into what we call a probability for regulation. So, in my viewpoint, perhaps not now, perhaps the metrics for doing that will come, but maybe not now. Which leads me to this issue that the Chinese are pushing or actually experimenting with, which is the issue of social credit ratings, which means that how the number of likes or how you're perceived in a society will determine to some extent how far you go in China in terms of your ability to, say, maybe access loans, in terms of your ability to get jobs. I don't know how many people saw a Black Mirror episode of Black Mirror a few years ago, 2 years ago, that talked likes and really just talked about it. Because that's really, you see a lot of people on Instagram, on social media, posting stuff just for likes. And will do anything just for likes. So a system that the Chinese are currently experimenting, and I think that to some extent that system in more authoritarian countries will probably come to play. So I think we need to also look at that. And then I don't want to dwell too much on the issue of artificial intelligence when we really have not fully applied common sense in our own market. There's going to be a big problem. If there's a deficit of common sense, applying artificial intelligence, I think, will be ruinous. Let me put it this way. So if you bring autonomous vehicles to Nigeria on roads that people do not respect traffic lights, where there are no place for people to run, where the Google Maps is often confused because somebody has built something on the road. It's going to cause more problems. So I think the first thing is organic. We need to design, because technology cannot solve that problem. Actually, technology will make it worse. So it goes back to how we accept that in our market, in our own system of governance, we need to apply first, as one of our senators used to say, common sense something. So I'm not going to dwell on artificial intelligence, but I'll tell you this though. Because robots and machines do not earn a salary. And so if you have any business or any industry where big data and robots and machines are really doing a job of more people, you're going to have, it's going to have an impact on any economy. Let me end this discussion really by quoting the famous scientist Albert Einstein, who said something, and I quote him, and says, "The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking." And that is so basic, yet so fundamental, that how we think collectively, if you put a thermometer on the Nigerian psyche currently, the result, it's not very good. And I think that is where the major problem lies. So how we think, we're not giving to solutions. No, we're not giving to even helping other people grow. So I think that is the first thing. And we've begun to find that in terms of the emphasis we pay on certain sectors, education being one. So if you ask me, the number one priority should be education. More emphasis on education. Someone, I think it was the lawyer, Hamud, that said, by the way, I love your firm. That's doing a great job. Talked about, oh yes, please clap. Talked about a digital strategy, a national digital strategy. I mean, what we have is a national broadband plan. But that in itself, it's not a digital strategy. It's just more like an infrastructure plan. Because the digital, it's a bit like the what I said earlier on in my presentation, where you go and buy a transmitter, digital transmitter, you install it, and you say you have your TV market has now gone digital. Absolutely not. You just bought a transmitter. That's what you've done. So having a broadband plan does not equate itself to having a national digital strategy. Because digital goes, remember this and think, she said it. Everything we do is affected by digital. And everything, health, insurance, agriculture, law enforcement. Think about it. So all of these things have to be looked at across the if digital affects insurance, for example, what does it mean? What's the value chain? So that is why we need a national digital strategy. Of course, the other things, the infrastructure things were coming. That's a given because you obviously need that to work. But the first thing is vision, and I talked about it because, again, I like to end on this. What this gentleman said. I know you're standing behind me, but let me just finish this. I feel a bit nervous. First, you have to paint the vision. What is the vision? What is our vision for the country? And our leaders must not only have that vision, they must share that vision, they must make us understand that vision and believe in that vision. If we're not collectively sharing in that vision, then I'm afraid there's nothing we're going to do. So, for me, for us to move forward and succeed in this new digital world, we must adopt a digital mindset. One that recognizes that technology is evolutionary and multidimensional, and it's not an event. It's not something that happens today. It's something that will continue to happen. And we also recognize that it's disruptive. And in terms of our democracy, even our democracy, in the face of digital, must innovate. Otherwise, we will have far bigger problems ahead of us. So we cannot choose and pick and choose. If we want to see it work, we must agree how that will work, and we must innovate ourselves out of the current problems that we have. Thank you very much, guys. It was really I enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, ladies and gentlemen. Another round of applause for Emeka. Wow. What a keynote. I suppose that's why they call it a keynote, right? That was so filled with value and definitely. With insight and with wisdom. I know there's something that particularly struck you. Share with us. No, own it. So, this is your narrative, honey.
What you rightly said was the fact that social media will need to be regulated. Now the question is, how do we regulate it? What is accepted? What is acceptable? How does this affect products? How does this affect influencers? How does this affect the world at large? Because at the end of the day, internet is a very, very small village, and with technology you're reaching places. So say, for example, certain social media platforms are banned in certain countries. That's a form of regulation. Now, what kind of regulations are we going to have? How are these regulations going to affect the market generally? How this regulation is going to affect people's perception of the Nigerian people and the African continent? So all of these questions need to be answered. Do we have like PG-13, R-18 on these accounts? We'll find out. What do you think, though?
No, it's very powerful. I'm totally with you. I always refer back to Zimbabwe because that's where I'm from. Especially once you have a following beyond a certain threshold and you want to engage in political commentary, you have to, like he said, bank that post for a few hours, let it just marinate before you post it, because you could easily land up, in a prison cell for a good few weeks for tweeting the wrong thing. But the question is, what is the wrong thing? Where's the regulation? What's the black and white of it? So this is a very important conversation, especially because his talk ended talking about democracy and how the digital space is, the revolutionization of the digital space in Africa is very, very key and central to what will become of democracy. But I'm not going to turn into a university lecturer.
No,
right
not
now.
Today. Anyway, so now it's time for us to take a breather. Okay, we're going to have some music, and then in about 5 to 10 minutes, we'll continue with the Google messages, and of course, the second session will kick off. So stay with us, and this again, remember, you can talk about this on social media. Please use the hashtag code 2019, and as well as hashtag DWB. That's Digital Wealth Book. Okay? So we have some music from the DJ, and I realize somebody's going to perform shortly. His name will tell you very, very shortly. So stay with us.
Right. And we have young people here. I see a lot of young people, but everybody is so quiet. Are you here? Hello? No. Hello? We have to do it the Nigerian way. Hello? Thank you. Come on now. Let's get our energy levels back up. That's why we're going to take this intermission. This is exciting. This isn't boring. It's not drab. It is cerebral, yes, but these are such powerful conversations, and guess what? After this, if you don't know how to use your phone and your data to make money, I don't know if I can help you. I don't know if I can help you, child.
No. Okay, so I think we're having Bukumi, right? I believe that's your name. That's not your name. What's your name, sir? All right. So we have.
Okay, we'll sit back, relax. Let's enjoy a music interlude from Ore. He's about to serenade us with something magical. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. We're excited. Please take it away. The stage is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Hill, and I have Ore here. We're just going to sing music like for a few minutes. So, right along with us. Thank you. That's it. I remember the last time I was very slow back in that time. I wish you many people go back. You don't want to see that time. But I don't know now, because of the break time. I want to follow you. We don't care in Papa. And my people all time. We will find things everywhere. We will keep going as we can. And now we're making it. And this song I'm making it. Oh, I don't care. Power back to me, look it. Oh, it's just in my love for me, look it. Just I think I'm missing. I'm doing I want to go out of the What do you mean, scary? What you call me, mama? Shaking me, I use rubber. So cool, me go. Come on, let you go to punch. You don't get my back here for what they want. General, got the one, no. To tell us, you want them so much before. Yeah, now you don't use them, you don't find them. Success, I see that thing. So forget about today. No one don't get all that you look at. No one can tell my love for me, look at. Yeah, just I think I'm missing, kill and do it. I want to go out of the day. Take it down now. I pray I don't say, make me live long. My blessings every day. I'm a good man. I think I'll go away. Free shower. I'm gonna be every day. I pray I just be sad, make me live long. My blessings every day. I'm a good man. I think I'll go away. Free shower. I'm gonna be I don't care about what you look at. I love you, look at. I am the God. Just I am the God. I put them in the city, I do it. I want to go on the good day. Just I am the God. I just be sad, make me wrong. Every day, look at I am. I think I'm going right.
There you go, put your hands together. Thank you so much for that incredible performance. I'm going to come and give you a very big hug. That was lovely. Thank you, Ore. Very lovely musical interlude. I love acoustic music.
Yeah, quite interesting. Wow.
Awesome.
Anyway, I think we have one more person. You have about 2 minutes, so please, it's just one song, because I think that person was already saying side B.
Exciting stuff. Please wow us.
I would wow you. I promise you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please, I want to beg you, forget the packaging. I'm not singing, I'm a comedian. My name is Bukumi Preacher. But please, I'm trying to greet you. When I greet you, please respond. I'm from Ibadan. And you might think you have Agidi more than you people in Lagos. Even in the church of God, when pastor say praise the Lord, we will not answer until the man of God threaten our life. We want to very doing praise the Lord. Then we'll scream. Then we'll scream. So good afternoon, everyone. There are so many faces that I really want to greet. Man of God, I saw. Oh, man of God, I greet you, sir. I greet you, Ogami, sir. I greet you, sir. I can continue, Abi. The one where you had your face, sir. You know, but maybe for performance, I know you at you. But be there, we cannot kill somebody career, and I saw that they start. We are that day. All right, my name is Bukumi Preacher, and because I'm sure that some of you are meeting me for the first time, I will try to introduce myself. Like I said, I'm from Ibadan. My blood group, AA, genotype is AA blood group O. That's what I am. I'm not that rich. I'm not poor. I live on the mainland in Lagos. This is my height. I think 163. This one you have to blame my parents. My daddy married for the wrongest reasons. I tell people, you know, when pastors want to advise you to look for what, they say look for virtue. Let us be good people. Someone that is good, that is smart, that is godly. So I will see a lady and I will see godliness and I will see behavior, character first. No, you look at other things. And I said, please, marry in the area of your weakness. If you are short, marry tall. If you are dark, marry yellow. My daddy married for love. My mother is short, my father is short. What do you want God to do? This is it. I'm the tallest in our area. And please, if you live on the mainland, marry on the island. I don't know any reason why somebody will live in Akowojo and you fall in love in Egbeda. It is stupidity. Like, check traffic occasion warning. I don't know. Those on the mainland, those places, you come on the island, like you see that everything is working. Nothing is working on the mainland. Even when you hear some names of the area, even you will be stressed. Please, I'm saying this is what. Oh boy, this thing cannot happen in Ibadan. I promise you, if you didn't grow up in Ibadan, you don't know what God has done for you. And if an Ibadan mother does not raise you, you don't know what God has done. You will come to an event like this, you will be making a remember the one that invited you. My mother did as if there's a reward for it in heaven. I'm saying that to even joke, like you don't know what it means for a Yoruba woman to punish you. My mother look at you and you cry. It's exactly mommy meeting because my mother does not just laugh or smile for no reason. And my mother will bring you to an event, you people are making noise, walking up and down. My mommy that if you are going, my mom will call you and say, Bukumi, well, we are going out now. This event that we are going, don't make noise. I say, yes, ma'am. Don't make noise. I said, we are here to go. We are still at home. He said, I just want to warn you ahead. I don't want you to do just when you get to the event. I say, yes, ma'am. My mother will say, well, when we get to the event, make sure that you don't eat. Alone, gently, don't go and disgrace me. I say, yes, ma'am. Don't go and disgrace me. I say, yes, ma'am. The problem will start when we get to the event. You see, my mommy that said that we should not eat. We get to the event, my mother will ask for food.
So Bukumi,
they will not serve my mommy. Let me finish this one. They will not serve my mommy. My mom will not say, Bukumi.
Bukumi the preacher, I'm going to take the role of your mother right now because we talked about your time limit before you came up here.
They never get it.
I'm not going to take any lessons from your mom. I'm not going to use the back of my hands. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank you so much for that beautiful performance. Thank you so much. That's Bukumi the preacher. I'm seeing a lot of new faces who've just walked in. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are celebrating the presentation of JJ Omojua's body of work, which is titled Digital, the New Code of Wealth. And of course, today is all about conversations on what is it? Democracy and development. Excuse me. I had a lapse in thought there.
Now, talking about new faces, I know the people at Temple are here, and I know they're a really, really big family and friends of JJ. Nice to have you in the house. All right, then. Straight to the business. We have a few goodwill messages to take before the second session starts. Now, the second session, like I said, will have the likes of All right. Please, if you're standing, please go back to your seats. If you didn't have one before, please find one now. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just do this as we invite our guests who are coming to share their goodwill messages and some of their thoughts and messages of support to JJ.
Yep.
Let's just have everybody kind of shuffle in. There are so many free seats on
Definitely.
that side, on this side as well. So to all the spectators in the back, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is he wearing what's that Ghanaian fabric called?
Kente?
Kente. There's a gentleman in orange kente at the back there, and I'm totally putting you on the spot because I'm that kind of host. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you for taking your seat.
I see the lady at the door.
Are we going to be calling people out like this?
I mean, let's just put people on the spot.
Well, I mean, I know you're good at throwing shade, so come on.
Let's not start this. Goodbye.
Okay, no, we're
All
not.
right,
Goodwill
messages. Here we go. We have 4 to 5. Please remember they have 60 seconds to give your goodwill messages because we need to get everything sorted out as soon as possible. First off, we would like to please invite Afolabi Imokude. Please step on stage. Thank you very much. A round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, I think it's afternoon now. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorables, distinguished, and everyone seated here, and all our hosts of young people here as well. It's my pleasure to be here. It's my pleasure to stand and join every one of us to honor JJ Omojua. In my opinion, I think he's clearly one of the shapers, one of the great influencers that we have in our country in this time. Many times I tell a lot of young people, I get to relate with a lot of, I'm young myself and younger people, and the way, because the way the world is going, and which is what is captured a lot in the book, and the fact that in Nigeria we're a youthful country, and when you talk about unemployment and talk about jobs, we actually don't have as much jobs as the people. So we need to reinvent ourselves, and I think Omojua is a perfect example of what every young Nigerian should look forward to in terms of just being able to reinvent yourself, being able to create value and use what you have to build a niche for yourself and to create value. And I think something that has been said to us from the excerpt that has been read, the bank of goodwill, very, very important. One thing I've seen with him, I am on social media, even though I'm not active on social media, but I engage and I watch and I read. And what I've seen with him is a lot of maturity, a lot of disciplined thoughts before he speaks. He doesn't just write rubbish, but you see a lot of maturity, a lot of disciplined thoughts, and a lot of value shaping and value influencing. So I want to say congratulations. The sky is just the beginning for you. Greater days are ahead. God bless you.
Thank you so much kindly.
Thank you so much.
Okay, still keeping it with our goodwill messages, I'd like to invite Olakunle Shorinyon onto stage to share some kind words with us. Very popular man. I can see why. Yes, walk that walk.
Thank you. Thank you, JJ, for all that you do. What has impressed me about your journey is the intentional architecture that you have continued to drive your work with. I met JJ about 10 years ago or 11 years ago. He was in my office and he just wanted to make a contribution. I put out on a post yesterday, he wanted to serve and share his ideas with our work, and I felt it was a great privilege to be having such a young person coming to help us with our work. But it came with a unique thought about digital revolution, and the way he went about his work, I didn't just understand it. He felt that I have to use the instruments of the digital revolution that is just nascent at that time to communicate, to be the instrument for my own new emerging voice. And he explained what social media has to be for me, blogging, and all of that. 10 years ago, I didn't just get it. And he tried, he labored for our office, tried to help us solve a couple of problems. And after a while, endured our nuisance and our frustrations, and he had to move on to bigger things. You know, when I look at how he is today and all that he's doing, these are just the same path that he had defined for me about 10 years ago. Like I said yesterday on my handle, I'm not doing badly today. I'm quite strong in my work, but I will have been much, much stronger, you know, if I've seen the ideas that he was sharing, you know, 10 years ago about how we have to embrace a digital revolution. My excitement, therefore, is the fact that he's making that clarion call again, but not just to me or to a few of his friends and people that he has been able to help over the years, but put it in a book for a lot of Africans and Nigerians and people in the world to understand our reality and how we can use these tools to better ourselves. And so for me, it's big, it's mighty, it's awesome. I believe strongly in positive world domination. I think those are the kind of tools that he has embraced. I really appreciate you. It's a joy and a privilege to be your friend and to be associated with you, your ideas and your wisdom and all that you bring. Thank you very much, and this is a good day.
A round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen, one more time. And next on our goodwill message list for now is no other person than the very funny, very intellectual comedian himself, Bovie. A round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen. Not take me crack joke today, oh. Not take me crack joke today, oh.
All right. They said I have 1.5 minutes, right? I didn't used to like Omojua. I used to hate him a lot because, like Mr. Emeka Umba said, he used to take on a few people who I liked on social media, you know. And then, but the good thing is, I never responded. I would just sit back. I could see the intelligence, I could see the passion, but I could also see some things that I felt he was wrong at the time. And then I got to meet him in person, and I was shocked when he walked up to me, greeted me. My hatred didn't even make me recognize him at first. So when he said his name, I said, you, I know you. And then the first 2 questions I asked him, I'm like, wait, you can smile? And you are charming? Because on Twitter, what he looked like was venom all through, you know? But then again, over time, I got to understand that perception defines people's realities. So you can feel justified, you can feel you are 100% correct in something, and someone who you disagree with also feels 100% correct. I think it all boils down to where we're coming from as individuals, how we're formed, how we're groomed, how we're programmed. You know, and if there's any reason why I now like to hang around Omojua is the fact that we share so many similarities, which is a passion for truth. His own is deeper than my own, though. His own is deeper than mine. We share a passion for truth, and it's very similar, like I said. And I see where he's going. You are quite revolutionary in your journey, and I wish you the best of luck. And I hope that the people who you try to straighten in social media in the future are not my friends too, so I wouldn't have a reason to hate you again. Thank you.
What an honest message. Thank you so much, Bovie. Just like he said, you know, we used to say the revolution will be televised, but I think it's pretty apt for us to say the revolution will be digitized. Thanks to people like Omojo and, of course, people like Bovie as well. I'd like to invite Modi Abba to give us our next goodwill message.
I would have reported you to my boss. Good afternoon. My name is Modi Abba. I'm a quantity surveyor. I've known Omojua for about 4 years. And the first time I met him, we had a little discussion and I invited him to my wedding in 2016. Thank God my wife isn't here. He attended my wedding and we've been close ever since. I want to congratulate him on this. He has done really well. I follow him on Twitter and everything he tweets, I haven't read the book, but I know for everything he tweets, there's sense in it, and it teaches a lot. And I don't know what else to say, but you're an amazing guy. Congratulations on this, Omojua.
Congratulations again, JJ. Up next now, Guru message for now will be no other person than Mr. Steve Babayako. Please step on stage, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for him. Very popular man.
Oh, come on.
No, you can't fall. You can't fall.
Well, thank you so much. JJ, it's amazing to see young people who are considered the now generation and the future generation doing amazing things. Ours is a very interesting country. So much opportunity, and yet so much despair and lack of hope. For people like you, I come around and follow your work and all of the things you've done. I think you represent that glimmer of hope for this country. And as long as you continue to document and just archive some of the good work you're doing for the next generation to take on and consume, I totally believe that there's still hope for this country. I'm very proud of you. So are many people who are here today. And I still keep preaching this message as I have this opportunity today. For the young generation, please, the cloud may look dark, but we cannot afford to give up on this country. Thank you very much.
Beautiful message. Thank you so much, Steve Babayako. Our final, no, not our final, excuse me for that error. I'd like to invite Ayo Shonaya onto stage to give us a few words as well. Ayo, you're very welcome. Please give him a round of applause. Just be careful on there.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ayo Shonaya. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I'm also a lawyer. And I know everybody's talking about Omojua, on Twitter. It's an activist and this and that and everything. I didn't engage with him on anything intellectual or anything like that. It was just, my hatred for him is basically because he's an Arsenal fan. And I'm a Man United fan, so that's how we kind of like connected. And we used to just banter on football. And also, I started seeing that stuff that that he puts out there aside football, and I started to like him. And we've been engaging on Twitter and social media for I don't know how many years, like maybe 4 years, and then we never met. And we always just to talk, and until I think it was in London. Aki Alabi was doing a book launch. And he invited me, and I was in London, and we went and we met. In fact, when I actually saw him, I didn't even know it was him, because his picture is DP on Instagram, Instagram and on Twitter. He never changes it. It's just that red thing. So I don't know what it looks like. And same thing with me. If you go to my all my social media platforms, I only have my first selfie, the very first selfie. I just put it there. I've never changed my DP, so that was one thing we had in common. So I didn't know what it looked like. So when somebody introduced him, and I'm like, "Oh, that's Omojua," I'm like, "He's even short, Seth." And then we greeted each other, we hugged, and we were like, like old friends, meeting at the airport or something. I mean, it's just funny. And we've clicked since then, and we've been talking, and we've become friends. And even my niece met him in South Africa. My niece thinks you're cute, by the way. I don't know, maybe that's... and we've been friends. So I want to congratulate him for today. And I said, definitely. I live on the mainland, and I said 9 o'clock. Civic Center at 9 o'clock. How are we going to get here? I actually intentionally stayed on the island yesterday so that I can make it here today. And I don't know, are we clapping for my commitment, or we're clapping for the fact that we can't get from mainland to island, at 9 o'clock in Lagos? But that's another conversation. So I just want to congratulate him for today, and seeing all the people here. My fantastic lecture, by the way, Mr. Emeka Imba. Give it up for Mr. Emeka Imba. That was very, very insightful. One of the most brilliant people that I know in the industry. And seeing people that I haven't seen in a long time today, and I'm doing networking today, because that's the whole point of this thing, to network, share ideas, meet people in person, because we're all Twitter people and everything. So I'd just like to say congratulations, Omojua, and many more of this. Thank you very much.
Hello. It's not a time for me to come here, but this was supposed to be a conversation led by young people, because in the reality of Nigeria, we've been excluded. You see, the president announced his latest ministerial list. We were not there. The previous minister, can you hear me? His previous ministerial list, we were not there. So I decided, okay, when I'm doing my own list, I'll just put young people there. So that's why most of the speakers today are young people. It's intentional. Also, we needed to make a point that when people here, especially those of the other generation, those that the ones that gave birth to us that complain about how bad we are, when they hear that we want to do something, they have expectations. They expect us to do it mediocre, in a mediocre way. They just expect things to be messed up. So it was intentional to bring them here to see that young people can have the kind of conversations we've already seen and the ones that would happen. But there was an exception to this, a couple of exceptions. But one of the exceptions was Pastor Godman Akinlabi. I invited him to come speak. So on Instagram, somebody reached out to me. I'd never met her. I still have not met her. Maybe I'll probably meet her today. She reached out to me that she needed to speak to someone. And the conversation she wanted to have, I didn't go to school for that. I didn't have the expertise for that conversation. So I started to look around. Who do I speak with? So then I asked her, what church do you go to? Then she mentioned it. I didn't even speak to him. I didn't speak to the pastor. I just spoke to my friend. I don't know if she's still here. She me plumped her, and then she organized it. Apparently, the church actually did have a unit. It's not the kind of unit you would have in church. I don't want to break it down because I don't want you to know exactly what I'm talking about. The church had a unit for people in that situation, and she was connected. And I felt that, and part of the conversation in the book, part of the content in the book is speaking to how faith, we can start to deal with the reality of faith differently. And Elevation Church is a representation of a responsible church. I don't mean that churches that don't... Now, let me qualify responsible so that you don't think your church is irresponsible. Churches have a conventional duty in terms of winning souls and taking people to heaven. Elevation Church takes it beyond that and actually influences and impacts society. So, for his goodwill message, I'd like for him to, give us some remarks, Pastor Godman, in terms of, because I'm sure there are future pastors here. There are people that are still running around the world that God will still call. So, so when they are setting up, they can start to think of the modern church through the elevation experience. So your goodwill, I'd love for you to also add some remarks, because somehow we couldn't get that thing to happen for you to actually do a proper presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Like everybody has said, JJ is a very wonderful guy. I met JJ maybe about 10 years ago. We've connected in so many ways. Many people don't even know him as a person of faith. But the truth is, if you know him, you know that he's somebody that is never shy about his faith as a Christian. My Twitter journey will be 10 years in August. And my first memory of JJ was, Eric, where's my iPad? I don't know if you can remember. That was how many years ago? Maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. 7 years ago. I requested my iPad and it was the hashtag. And I was like, who is this guy? Who will go on Twitter because, he left his iPad inside one Eric flight and they stole the iPad. because he went back to collect it and the thing has vanished. And it was only the hairstyles and all that, the staff that were there, something like that. And the thing went viral, and I then realized that he was actually somebody that was very close by to me in terms of church and all that. And that was how we became close. My pastor, Pastor Sam Adeyemi, is also his pastor and all that. Now, talking about the church, especially the church at this current point in time. And the church, like any other religious organization, we're in a time where organized religion is really being bashed, and many young people are disconnecting from organized religion across faith line, not just church, and across denominational line. But the truth is that whatever is called faith will always go through a trend and a curve from generation to generation. There will be a generation that will adopt very fast, which we call revival. There will be another generation where the curve will go down, and it looks like there's no revival, there's no adoption. And it creates a new opportunity for us to re-examine the faith very properly. And for those of us who are at the forefront, to also think about relevance. And relevance is about engaging a generation that you are sent to. A lot of churches today are not fully engaging because we don't even care enough to understand the need of the generation that we're sent to. This is a digital generation, the social media generation. Nigeria is bottom heavy, like we all know. Lots of young people. I was still at a meeting with my executive team yesterday. Well, they analyzed the people that have visited our church this year. This year, at our main campus here in Lekki, we've had maybe close to 8,000 people visit for the first time as a first-time guest. And the analysis showed that 70% of these 8,000 fresh guests are below 35. So these are the kind of people we are attracting, and they have peculiar needs. And we have to be able to meet those needs beyond just promising them that they will go to heaven, because you have needs on earth. You know, heaven is a post-dated check, but you want to live today. And we live today so that we can engage a more favorable future. Many people live for the future, but they don't live today. And it's when you live today that you can actually craft a future that you want. So technology, social media has helped us to be able to know what's going on today, what people are going through today. For me personally, I don't know, I know many people here will do that. If you want to know what is in the mind of the average young person in Nigeria, check any trending stuff and check their comments. When you read a comment on what is trending, you know their perception about that particular issue. And then when you have to speak to it, you don't really pander to them, you pander to the truth, but you package the truth in such a way that can appeal to that mindset that is already straying. So, I don't want to talk too much. JJ, I want to appreciate you. I know that maybe Pastor Rapu will still be here later in the day, who is a father in the faith for us, for my generation, and he's going to speak more to the topic of faith in the digital age. But I want you to know that you're doing a great job. Your courage is very motivating, especially at a time where people are not really speaking out about important issues that will shape the future. But you are very bold and you talk. And when we see you in the physical once in a while like this, we know that you don't have to be big to be bold. You just have to be yourself, and you don't need to have a position to be bold. You don't need to have a lot of money to be bold. JJ, you're going to be rich, much, much richer than this, because the new wealth is digital, and that's why you are playing fully. So I know that God will, God will increase your influence. And my prayer today is that you continue to use this influence for the development of our nation and for our continent. God bless you.
And a big, big, big amen to that. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Incredible. You know, it's one thing as a lot of the speakers said, it's one thing for us to interact with one another in the digital space, but this human interaction, I know digital is the new wealth, but man, nothing substitutes human interaction.
Nothing at all. I couldn't agree more with that. So sometimes when you have 1,001 followers or 50,000 followers on Twitter and Instagram, sometimes when you are in locations where you know that they are, please endeavor to reach out to them and just say hi, because you never know. Anyway, straight more into business. It's time for our second panel for today, and we'll be talking about impact on digital education, digital on big business, digital banking, music, and digital. And no other person to moderate this session than...
Oh, I'm excited. She goes by the name Lele Balde. Elle est une femme jeune qui vient du Sénégal, mais elle habite ici à Lagos parce qu'elle suit arabe. She lives here she's a Senegalese lady. She's with Business Day Nigeria, and she's here in Lagos pursuing her dreams, and I love it. Hi, Lele. How are you? Did I put you on the spot? No, you deserve to be celebrated. And our panelists, this one is a proper panel for the culture, right?
Yes,
like
yes, it is.
when we talk about young people, when we talk about what are we engaging with, what makes us tick, what moves us, and then I love the fact that we now put banking in there, banking and business, because this culture needs to pay.
I think that's something that's quite weird, because growing up we knew that our parents saved one way or the other. They had to starve or save for us to go to school, and then we're finally here where we're supposed to be saving for our kids. I know it's good to pop bottles and everything, but really, how much are we saving?
These are questions that we hope will be answered in one form or another.
Yep.
But let's introduce your panelists for this, our second conversation of the day. First up is Simi Fajemirokum. Excuse me. I tried my best. Excuse me.
Hello, Simi. How are you today?
So then French rolls off my tongue, and then I try Yoruba and I trip all over it. But please forgive me.
Also, we have Ortega Ogra. A round of applause for Ortega.
Round of applause for Ortega. Joining them is Bella Ndubuisi.
Bella.
Round of applause for her. Let's keep the energy flowing in the room. Hello.
Hi,
Yinka Daramola. Come on. Oh, he needs a special introduction.
Yes, he does need a special introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you know him as the real energy god. I know him as Dotun. Nice to meet you, sir. But for all of you that are young like myself, we know him as the D-O to the T-U-N. Oladotu Kayode, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for him.
Energy god. I'm surprised he didn't just like jump on stage from here. Power panel this is. So we're going to let you guys get straight into it. I want to do a little activity first just to make sure our sound is where we need it to be. Lele, I just want you to send a shout out on your microphone. Will you?
Shout out to JJ.
Yeah, Dotun. Shout out on your microphone.
You have to press it.
What's good?
Yeah, very nice. Ortega.
Bonjour.
Yeah, that's right. Now to this side of the room, I feel like I'm Dotun's energy is contagious. Now I feel like I'm hyping a concert. Simi, shout out.
Hello.
Oh, that's right, bro.
Hi.
Yinka?
You need to press the button.
Did we get that? Let's just make sure your mic is live and ready for this conversation.
Hi.
Very nice. Hi, everyone. Okay, so we're good to go. On that note, Lele, you have your floor.
Yeah, so when you're not using the microphone, please endeavor to turn it off. Thank you very much. Uh-oh. Okay, microphone.
That's after that elaborate shout-out exercise. Somebody wants me to exercise.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. I think the audience shows a testament to who JJ is. It shows a testament to his influence and the kind of people that he is friends with. So I want to take a moment to thank you all for being here. with us today. I'd like to thank our awesome panelists. I'm super excited to speak to you today about digital influence and how you've been able to use that in your personal life, but also through your businesses. So with this panel, I have very specific instructions. We want each person to speak from their area of expertise, and we want the world to see the kind of young people that we have coming from Africa, the kind of young people that are moving the needle forward and contributing to a quota of development. So we're here talking about impact of digital, and we have a plethora